Hello, I'm Dave and this is Logan, out once again for a walk in the countryside. Thanks for joining us. Now today we're at Corfe Castle in Dorset. You can just about see it behind me over my left shoulder. A little bit hazy, we're filming very early in the morning. And the castle and the village named after it are located about 6 miles southeast of Wareham and 5 miles northwest of Swanage. The A351 passes through the village, and we're going to be walking a roughly 4-mile circular route with the odd detour or two. We'll head west from Corfe Castle along a ridge to Knowle Hill and then down into the tiny village of Knowle, and then we'll head further south to Bucknell House and then back to Corfe Castle. Now I'm filming at the beginning of June. It is a glorious sunny morning, plenty of blue sky, should be perfect conditions for walking. Do come along with us. Now I've parked my car at the National Trust car park, which is located just to the north of the castle, and we're going to initially head westwards. The castle, as I say, is over to my left. I won't go into great detail about the history of the place because, of course, we walked around there before when we did our Kingston to Corfe Castle video. If you haven't seen that one, do check it out. But, well, I'll tell you a little bit of history about it anyway. The castle itself was built by William the Conqueror, and it dates to the 11th century. And it's built on a knoll between a gap in the Purbeck Hills. And it's one of the earliest castles to be built partially using stone. A keep was added in the 12th century by Henry I, and it was a royal castle in the English Civil War. And after it was captured by the parliamentarians, it was pretty well demolished so that it couldn't be used again. After the demolition, at some stage the castle was handed back to the original owners, the Banks family, who kept it for the next 3.5 centuries or so without trying to repair it. Ralph Banks gifted it to the National Trust in 1982, and they now own and run it. Well, just before we leave the castle, just looking to the south, there's something called the Castle Rings. And that's basically the remains of a 12th century motte and bailey castle built during an unsuccessful siege of Corfe Castle by King Stephen in 1139. It was reused in the Civil War in the 17th century when a battery was located there, but you can still make out some of the earthworks today. Well, the first section of our walk, so we're heading westwards along part of the Hardy Way, which is that 220-mile long distance path that connects places that had links with Thomas Hardy in Dorset. It starts at Higher Bockhampton, where he was born, and finishes at Stinsford Churchyard, where his heart is buried. And so you've got a choice as we're heading westwards. We could either stick on the Hardy Way, or you could climb up onto the West Ridge and get some better views there. We're sticking to the lower path at the moment because there's something that I want to check out on the lower part of the route. Well, this is an important part of the route for folk that might be doing this walk after seeing the video. The Hardy Way continues off to the right there, heading uphill onto the ridge, but I'm going to continue along a footpath along the bottom to the left. Well, our first pit stop of the day to take in some views. So this is looking over to the west, and well, the thing I want to explore, I can just about see in the distance there, it's the remnants of an old lime kiln. And then if I just very slowly pan round to the south, it really is quite glorious. And of course, well, the sea isn't too far over the other side of that ridge. Such a beautiful part of the county. Well, the year really is flying by now. The field in front of me here already had its first cut of hay of the season. And this is the deserted lime kiln that I wanted to have a look at. And there's a small chalk quarry behind it. And it's quite unusual in that it's got a small lime burner's bothy or shelter built into the west side. But the kiln was restored by the Dorset countryside volunteers a few years ago. But it looks quite mystical, doesn't it? Well, we'll have a little bit of an investigation. I've not a great deal to see inside the little shelter, but it's great that there's still a little bit of it here. And then presumably looking out, we've got a beautiful view over to the south. Well, we had some fun exploring that old lime kiln. So we're continuing to head westwards, and I can just see the village of Church Knowle down in the valley to the south. But we're now going to start heading in a sort of northwesterly direction, heading uphill onto the top of Knowle Hill. Halfway up the side of Knowle Hill, good spot just to have another pit stop. So looking down into the valley below, fields so green and lush with the wet spring that we've had. And there is Church Knowle. We'll be having a little exploration into the village there later on in the walk. But some of these views are quite spectacular. Well, we've made our way to the top of Knowle Hill, and there's some cracking views over to the north from here. There in the very far distance over on the right is Poole, and then there's Poole Harbour, that vast expanse of water. And then round to the left there's the town of Wareham. Well, just as I make my way off Knowle Hill, we get a good sighting down below of Barnston Manor in the valley down there. We're not actually going to be passing it today, but let me tell you a little bit about it anyway, because it's one of the oldest buildings in Dorset. It's a former manor house built towards the end of the 13th century on the site of a former Saxon house, and possibly there was an even earlier Roman house there. Alterations were made in the 16th century and it became a farm. Well, I've just come off Knowle Hill, and before I do a sort of major detour westwards, I've done a tiny little detour to the north to show you this fascinating memorial that's just behind me here. And it's a memorial to the Creech Barrow Seven. Now, these were 7 local men who led secret lives as volunteer resistance fighters in the Second World War. Using the Home Guard as a cover, they were trained in espionage and demolition skills as an auxiliary unit that would have been used if there had been a German invasion. Effectively, they would have been operating behind enemy lines, and their base was in woods just to the east of here, and apparently you can still see the remains today. Whew, it's just a little pit stop to catch my breath, show you where we've been. So I'm sort of climbing up the western side of Knowle Hill again. So the memorial was round the corner at the bottom of that road here. Interesting, this sort of footpath that I'm coming up now, I wonder if it's the remnants of an old tramway. Certainly if you look at 1901 maps of the area, there were a few sections of tramway track around these parts, presumably used for carrying limestone. Certainly there were clay pits over on the other side of the ridge, I don't know. Well, just before we drop down into the valley to go through Church Knowle, I'm going to take quite a big detour. I'm going to carry along this ridge here because there's a couple of interesting things to explore. Now, we are on a nature reserve, so I've got to keep Logan on a lead on this section of the walk. Well, there's some more quite breathtaking views to the south as I go along the ridge. A great view of the sea now. I think that must be the Clavel Tower, just on the ridge. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Of course, we've done a walk there in the past. Oh, wow. Look at this. Well, this, folks, is the Grange Arch, also known as the Creech Folly. And indeed, it is an 18th century folly built by a former owner of Creech Grange to the north, a chap called Dennis Bond, in 1746. And it's, a triple arch of stone with the central arch is surmounted by battlements, and then you've got spires each side. And certainly if you look back to the mansion one way, you can see why it was built up here, and there's a terrific view of the sea on the other side. And it's now under the care of the National Trust. Well, folks, I'm sure you'll agree it was well worth the detour to check out the folly. I think with both the detours together, we're probably going to end up doing about 6 miles today rather than 4 miles. But hey ho, we're now going to retrace our steps a little and head towards Church Knowle. Well, I believe there's a pub. Well, a little update on the route. I've just come off Knowle Hill, which you can see behind me, and heading down into the valley to Church Knowle. It's beginning to cloud over a little bit, but still a fair bit of blue sky about. We're just coming into Church Knowle from the western end. The first thing we come across is the Margaret Green Animal Rescue Sanctuary, which was founded in 1965 by Margaret Green, who died in 2009 at the age of 94. And it basically provides for the rescue and rehabilitation of animals escaping from cruelty and neglect. And it covers something like 35 acres and provides care for up to 1,200 animals, including cats, horses, donkeys, pigs, goats, rabbits, chickens and ducks. But no dogs. I believe there were issues concerning the noise of dogs barking, so none are held here. Instead, I think dogs are looked after at one of their other sites. I think there's one near Beer Regis, not sure. Well, Church Knowle is certainly a pretty little village. As far as its history is concerned, well, the Saxon name of the village was Knowle, which means hill, and it's one of a series of small settlements along the ridge. Each had their own block of land. And this is the new inn, which probably has got 17th century origins. The present porch and entrance doorway is modern. And as it's open, well, we ought to pop in there, purely for research purposes for the video, of course. Well, folks, here we are in the beer garden of the new inn. Just quality testing their ale, a pint of Jurassic, which I've never had before. Oh, I say, got a bit of a kick in it. And of course, Logan's tucking into his crisp, not pipers today, but real hand-cooked sea salt. So, yeah, it's getting the thumbs up from him. I think we might be here for a while. Well, I feel suitably refreshed with that pint of Jurassic. So let's continue with a wander through the village. This lovely thatched house here is the old post office, and the core is from the 18th century, and looks still got the old post box on the side there, which is painted black, which means it's not used anymore. And that looks to be like the old reading room, with a date of what, 1887 above the porch there. Oh, I love this one. You've got the thatch, and then on the left hand side there's stone with roses going up the wall, and then in the front it's the white paint. Beautiful. Now, Knowle Cottage in front of me here has got origins to the late 17th, early 18th century. Now, this is the church of St. Peter. As you can see, a fair bit of it is covered in scaffolding. There's obviously some refurbishments going on at the moment. But, well, the chancel was built in the early 13th century. The nave and south transept were built shortly afterwards. The 14th century west tower was then rebuilt in the 18th century, and the north aisle added between 1833 and 1841, when the entire north wall of the nave and most of the west wall of the transept were removed. The south porch was built in the 14th century, and it consists of a nave, chancel, a west tower, north aisle, north and south transept, and a south porch. Well, we'll have a little peep inside. And there's the font on the left, and then looks like that's the organ up there, and there's quite an extensive gallery, not only at the back but all along the sort of northern side of the nave. Looks like there's a stained glass window on the northern part of the nave, and then just looking around towards the chancel, a stained glass window above through where the altar would normally be, and there's the pulpit, wooden, and looks like a south chapel or south transept there. And just opposite the church, I think this building here is Church Farm, and if I'm correct, well, parts of that date to the 17th century. Well, what a pretty little village. Okay, we're now going to start heading southwards and looking for a river. Well, there we go. The hay being cut in this field as I speak, and haylage bales being created. All mechanised, of course, these days. Now, this is the river that I was looking for, the Corfe River, one of 4 main rivers that flow into Poole Harbour. And it's 5.5 miles long. Its source is at North Eggleston to the west of Steeple, and it flows east. The Saxon name for the river was Wicken, as well. Wicks is dairy farm, basically. Well, a great view here in the very far distance of the church tower at Kingston. Of course, when we did our Kingston to Corfe walk, we started from there. Now, that house up there, I believe, is Bucknell House, which was built in 1870 in Regency style. The farm next door is close to the site of a Roman villa that was here between the 1st century and the 4th century, and then the area reverted to farmland when the Romans left. And I was reading that it was all excavated between 1976 and 1991. Well, we're very much on the homeward leg now, and I can just see the top of Corfe Castle in the distance above that ridge there. Oh, what a beautiful sight. Corfe Castle nestled between 2 ridges. So we've got a short distance to get back to the village, and then we've got a decision to make. Do we go to the Fox Inn, or do we go for a cream tea somewhere? Decisions, decisions. You know, I've mentioned this in quite a few videos recently, but I'm going to mention it again. It's extraordinary. I just cannot remember seeing so many buttercups in meadows before. The display this year has been quite awesome. Well, here we are, folks, back at Corfe Castle village, and in particular the Fox Inn, which dates to 1568. It's possibly one of the oldest pubs in Dorset, although parts of the Bank's Arms in the main square might date to 1549. Anyway, it would be sacrilege to pass by without paying a visit, wouldn't it? Well, folks, here we are in the pub garden of the Fox Inn. Well, we had to visit it, didn't we? And just testing out there, we've gone for Buckham, one of my favourites. Lovely. And still no pipers, I'm afraid, so we're going to have to go with Walkers. There we go. He's not sure, but he'll go for it in the end. Well, What better way to finish off a walk than a dog dip in the river and a refreshing drink. Is that good? Good boy. In you go. Well folks, we've come to the end of our walk. We thought we'd do the end scene here by the Grange Arch. We've got a super walk today. The weather's been terrific and the scenery quite stunning. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give us a thumbs up and a like, and do leave a comment, and do check out our Facebook page, Dave's Countryside Walks. So until we meet again, thanks for watching and cheerio. Sweetie? Yeah.